let's talk about harvesting honey first.
Harvesting honey?
Yes.
Well, I brought a few tools along.
Great.
Okay, this is our smoker, and we talked about pheromones that the bees communicate with.
Yes.
We're not exactly sure, believe it or not, we spent lots of money. By the way, there are more papers been written about bees than all the other insects put together.
Really?
Yes, and our government actually funds bee research labs. There's one in Maryland, one in Louisiana, one in Texas, one in Arizona, one in Utah, and every state has an state entomologist that's funded by the USDA.
And that reflects the importance that bees are.
And the reason why is because 1/3 of our food is because of pollination. And the government's really interested in keeping us full of food.
Yes.
Okay?
Thank goodness for that.
No food riots here. So what happens is, with a smoker, we emit a smoke into the hive, and that destroys the ability for it desensitizes their noses.
Okay.
And they can't communicate. It also says, I don't know what's happening here. I don't know how long this is going to last. I better get some honey. So they all dive into the hive, and they start gorging themselves on honey. When they're gorging on honey, they're not as mean as they are normally. Now, bees are not normally mean. You'll have some beekeepers that have bees, and they got to put on these full suits and stuff. But the way I handle that is, if I cannot take the top off the beehive without getting stung, then I replace the queen.
Oh.
Because the temperament of the hive is directly dependent upon the queen's temperament. So if I got mean bees, I need a gentle queen.
Okay.
But I like to be able to walk through my bee yard and lift the hive. Okay, and
Quick litmus test.
yeah, quick litmus test. And what the smoker does is just, and I use burlap or pine needles depending on what location I'm at. Pine needles might emit a spark, so I don't do that out in the countryside. I use for the smoke, a couple, 3 puffs of smoke. The bees settle down real fast, and you can work the hive.
Okay, great.
Okay, so then to get this frame out, which is a plastic frame in this case because it was the best looking one I had yesterday, bees they only have 7 genes to protect them from diseases. So they go out and they collect tree sap, and you're familiar with pine sol, the antiseptic cleaner. That's because pine tar, pine resin, is antiseptic. Bees collect tree sap, and they mix it with the same enzyme they make honey with, and that becomes their antibacterial solution that they put everywhere. And they coat the whole inside of the hive. It's like it's varnished. And they glue everything down together with it. So you have to have a hive tool to break these things apart, and then you use a frame.
Is that strong, eh?
Yes,
the
it
glue.
is. As a matter of fact, you have to prise the lid off.
Okay.
Which is another reason you want gentle bees. You want to pop that lid every couple of days so it's easy to get off.
Okay.
And then you use a frame puller to pull the frame out. And now you got the frame here, and you give it a sharp rap, and all the bees except 3 fall off. And you take a brush, and this is called a bee brush, and you flick the bee. You don't brush them off. You flick them off. If you brush them off, you don't tick them off, because you wouldn't like to be pushed around, would you?
No.
But being flicked off is okay. So that's all the tools that a beekeeper needs, is a bee brush, a frame puller, a hive tool, and a smoker, and of course matches.
And a suit maybe?
You always should have a suit, because even though these bees were nice the last time you talked to them, they may not be today.
Okay.
Then I'll leave it at that.
And then you can reuse
these
frames,
right.
And the bees, do you have to clean them?
Well, let's talk about that. This is a frame of honey. I didn't bring in a frame of brood because we're getting towards the end of the year, and I don't want to go down and possibly damage the queen, because I can't replace her at this time of year.
Okay.
So I brought in a frame of honey. And what happens here is you can see how, if you look at the edge over next to the jar of honey, we have uncapped cells, and then the rest of it is capped. I have something that looks like an afro comb. It's called a capping scratcher, and it has 12 stainless steel teeth sticking out that are on an angle. And I'll rake that across the comb, and what happens is it breaks the seal of the wax seal.
Okay.
Then I put it in a centrifuge, flip the on switch, and I come back in an hour, and all the honey has been spun out. Then what we do, this is what separates a local beekeeper, or local beekeeper from a commercial beekeeper. Because commercial beekeepers are dealing in great quantities. They're dealing in barrels of honey. They have to run it through a filter because they don't want it to crystallize. And so by running it through a filter, they get rid of all the particles that cause crystals. Right. Whereas a local beekeeper like myself, we run it through 3 strainers, a coarse strainer, which collects any of the bits of wax, and then a 600 micron strainer, which collects more wax, and then the 200 micron strainer, which gets rid of the other. So what will happen is this honey will crystallize. Now, a lot of people say, well, I got this rock of honey. What do I do with it? Warm it up.
Okay.
Don't put it in the microwave, because the microwave doesn't heat it evenly.
we need to wrap it up.
Okay.
So just quick note on why it's important to buy local honey and what we can do to help the bees and where we can learn more about beekeeping.
Okay. The reason we want to buy local honey is, one, we want to lower our carbon footprint because we don't want the earth to burn up. Okay, so buying your local food, which means anything raised within 100 miles of you, lowers the amount of fuel required to get it from the market to yourself. Then the other part of local honey is that it's good for you. My wife, for example, had tremendous allergies, and I finally convinced her if she eat the local honey, it would take care of that. And this year she only took 4 pills. We were able to open the windows, and so now she's a firm believer in it.
And what we can do to help bees?
Plant bee-friendly plants.
And we can show a bunch of links to get more resources on that. I'm sorry we're rushing through because we're running out of time, but also if you want to learn more about beekeeping, we have some links to refer you to of the local beekeeper associations.
Yes.
So thank you very much, Wayne,
for
sharing all this information. It's really fascinating, and I think we all can benefit from knowing more about bees and protecting them so that we can keep up our food supply and this delicious byproduct of honey, too.
Good.
We've really enjoyed having you. Thank you. And if you want to meet Wayne and ask him more questions in person, he goes to the Palo Alto Farmers Market every Saturday, and you can see him with this hat.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
One thing's for sure, I'm gonna get it right. Oh yeah.